Welcome to Gwinnett County Public Library. I'm Amy Perry, an adult services specialist here at the library. Thank you for joining today's program, Empowered Parenting. Today, we're so lucky to be speaking with Kelley Coleman. Kelley is a feature film development executive turned author who is active in the disability advocacy community. She serves on various committees and school boards, and she's part of the Canine Companions. Her book, Everything No One Tells You About Parenting a Disabled Child, Your Guide to the Essential Systems, Services, and Supports, is what we'll be discussing today. Please welcome Kelley.
Thank you so
Hi.
much for having me. Good morning.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, it's 12 o'clock here in Georgia, but thank you so much. We know you're coming from California. And we're so excited to have you here today. And I know we'll have several questions from our community to ask, but I have some questions to get our conversation started. For those of our viewers who may not be familiar with who you are and the book that you wrote, can you give us a brief synopsis of what it is and why you started to write this book?
Yes, so my book, as you mentioned, Everything No One Tells You About Parenting a Disabled Child, is really the guide when you start this journey parenting a disabled child. Everybody says there should be a handbook for how to do this. And now there is. I am the parent of two amazing boys. We have a 13-year-old, we have an 11-year-old. They are the best of friends and they chase each other and love to go swimming together and play with the dog and all the brother things. Our 11-year-old also has multiple disabilities. And so within that, he has an undiagnosed genetic syndrome and has also been diagnosed with epilepsy, autism, cortical vision impairment, cerebral palsy. He has a feeding tube, fine motor, gross motor behavior. Like he's like an overachiever, and he's like, I'm just going to check all the boxes. So he checks a lot of boxes, and because of that, we really do have an insight into how to do the things that not just the school and the insurance that many people need to figure out, but the medical, the behavioral, and just kind of putting all the pieces together. Um, I am especially passionate about like how the heck can we make this easier? I feel like we are all reinventing the exact same wheels when we are starting on this journey. And how can we empower ourselves to build this journey for ourselves is what I get so excited about. Things that have worked for our family may or may not work for yours, but let's figure out how to build that foundation so that we can really get back to the point of parenting, which is loving our kids exactly as they are and like figuring out how to put all that like insurance paperwork to the side, because sometimes there's a lot of insurance paperwork and it's never going to be fun, but we can get better at doing all of these things so that we can just get back to being a parent and loving our kids.
And I think that's so important. When I read it, you and I had discussed a little bit. My sons are college age and twins, and so having one that had disability, I've been through a lot of this. But when I read your book, even though I'm a, I guess, quote unquote, seasoned parent, in that it reminds me so much of how important it is to share that information with other parents who might be starting on that journey, or maybe their journey has shifted a little and things have really changed for what they're looking at. And I think for the book is so easy to read, which is so nice when life happens and you just need information. You don't need all that extra fluff or medical terms, or you make it so accessible to parents. And I think I want to thank you personally for doing that, because I think other parents will appreciate the simplicity and the ease of just getting that information in their hands of where they need to start.
Thank you. I'm so excited that you found it easy to read because that I knew if this book felt like eat your broccoli, then it fails,
Right.
because then it's somebody gets it for you. It's on your nightstand, and then you end up feeling worse because you haven't read it, but you totally don't want to read it because it's just another thing on your list. And I wanted it to feel like a conversation with a friend
Mhm.
where it's actually immediately understandable and you know how to take action for the next thing. One of the questions I get asked most often is it weird that I laughed during the insurance chapter? And I'm
Mm.
like, yes, it is. But also, that's the point, is if we can fully understand what we're reading and like weirdly enjoy it, then that's when it sticks and that's when we can actually use the information.
Right. And as parents of disabled children, you become an expert in so many things that you never thought you
Yes.
would. Well, not necessarily by choice, but at the end of the day, you know so much about your child and your family, insurance, IEPs, all those jargons of medical terms, and it's a lot to handle. What is some advice, just things that you've experienced that you would share with parents, to be able to kind of ground themselves and having that opportunity to just love on their child, but also knowing that they have um, a lot of obstacles as parents to provide the best for their child.
So the three things that I always, pardon me, jump in and tell people. Number one, however you are feeling, yep, there's no like, oh, cheer up. Oh, what about this? Oh, you should just feel this way. Caregiving is a job in addition to parenting, and it's a lot. And as you said so perfectly, we learn all of these things that I never knew I would know so much about neurology and genetics and
Right.
gastroenterology and special education law. Um, it is so much. So first of all, however you are feeling, validate that. And if you are feeling badly, know that you will feel better within this process, but allow yourself to feel whatever it is you need to feel. Number two is if you are looking for a shortcut to feeling better or figuring things out or really finding your place as a parent, a caregiver, someone with an experience that probably took a left turn from the road you thought you were on, is the sooner you can connect with other caregiving parents, even if their kids have different disabilities, the sooner you connect with them, the better. Somebody is going to know whether or not your insurance covers diapers and how to make that happen. Somebody is going to know where to get the feeding tube supplies and which medical supply company will bring them. Especially when you can connect with local parents, online, in person, on Zoom support groups, whatever it is, um, really puts the pieces together so much faster. And something that I wish I had done, my number three, I always tell people, which is probably the number one, um, something I wish I had done right from the beginning, and this is like a lesson in my own failures, is learning about disability from disabled people.
Mm.
I realized that early on and for years in my journey, I was getting information about disability from people who are not disabled, and many or most of whom do not have the first-hand experience in their homes, even with disability. So, like, all of this messaging I was getting was how tragic my kid is and how awful this is, and I don't know how you're going to do it, and you poor thing, and your poor kid. And I'm like, can somebody just tell me my baby has amazing hair? Like he does. And we started on this journey literally when my son was a baby. When you're learning about disability from disabled people, you learn very quickly that disability, it is not an inherent negative or positive. My kid isn't tragic. He's not suddenly a superhero. This is just part of who he is. Um, he's not wonderful despite his disabilities. He's just a great kid, period. And disability is a naturally occurring fact of life. It absolutely can make life more challenging because the world is not built by and large for people with disabilities. But even just following disabled leaders and creators and influencers online can really shift the entire paradigm and can start to give you a framework for really building your kids' own disability identity, as well as finding your place within this community.
I think that's so important. I also, when my son was younger, I was looking at all his therapists for telling me about his about having cerebral palsy, and they're wonderful therapists. I still keep in touch with many of them. Absolutely amazing men and women that we are fortunate to work with. But they are like me. They are able. They are not disabled. And I think as my son got older and he was more vocal about what his needs are and how he perceives the world and how others perceive him, that's where I learned so much about, oh, okay, he is a person that has these things, right? I am his parent and I obviously want to protect him and do the best by him, but he also will tell me now as a 22-year-old, I don't need that, or I need this, or why aren't you listening to me? So again, it doesn't matter if our child is 5 or 25, they're gonna still tell us, hopefully, in whatever way that they can communicate of their needs. And I think that's so important for
Yes.
parents and caregivers.
I wish I'd had you when we started on this journey.
Yeah.
Yes. Million times yes.
Yeah, and I think also you're, saying that you need to find that support group, whatever it is so important, whether it's just a friend that you have or a neighbor that you can use as a soundboard and just vent, because there are days that are going to be rough, but there are days that are going to you're going to celebrate like nobody's business, right? And it's something probably small. I think in the book you had several small victories that your family celebrated so much, and I love that, and that your son has beautiful hair. That those are things that are so important, right? As parents, and I love that.
Yeah, it is so true that hard things happen to everybody. I
Right,
have talked to many disabled friends and leaders and experts who have said unequivocally, yes, it is harder to be disabled than not, but hard isn't necessarily bad. Uh,
right,
a friend of mine just ran a marathon last weekend. That's really hard.
right.
Also not bad. We all have a hard thing, and how can we lift each other up, and especially lifting up our kids, and exactly like you said, really listening to and following their lead so that they have a voice and have agency in their own lives to the fullest extent possible.
Right. And how that kind of leads into the next question. How do you as a parent teach your child about self-advocacy and why is that important?
Mhm. So, self-advocacy is something that I think, as people, I am a non-disabled mom of two kids. One is disabled, one is not. Um, and in many ways, it looks very different for my two kids. Our older son, who is fully verbal and does well in school and all of those things, he needs to speak up at school and with his friends and stand up for the right thing. With our younger son, Aaron, his communication is emerging and he communicates through combinations of expressions and vocalizations, gestures, some signs, and has gotten really good with his AAC device, which is also known as his talker. AAC stands for Alternative and Augmentative Communication. And basically, it's an iPad with a communication program. He presses buttons and it says words, which is amazing. And because his communication is emerging and he's not yet able to have these full self advocating conversations, self advocacy started with us by saying, okay, Aaron, we're getting ready for school. Do you want to wear the red shirt or the
Mhm.
blue shirt?
Right.
And he could, even when he didn't have a lot of motor control with his hands, or even looking towards something or pushing one away or whatever indication, I want the blue shirt. um, that begins self-advocacy, because what that is teaching is it's teaching him, I want to hear what you think, and that matters. And I will listen to your opinion. And the more that we can build in those small ways, regardless of our kids' level of communication, the better. now that he is more communicative, he would watch Moana every single day. I don't know if you guys all have seen that movie. If not, it's amazing and you should see it. He would watch Moana all day, every day if he could. So within the communication, it's amazing. I would too. But he's also learning. We want to hear what you think, and you need to understand when it's someone else's turn to pick the
Mhm.
movie. Um, but then when he is at school, and if he is frustrated, he knows he isn't going to be just told, like, knock it off, feel better.
Mhm.
He's going to be listened to and say, like, hey, what do you need in this moment? And he might need a break, he might need a drink, he might need something to be explained again. And we're really working on him knowing when we're asking his opinion that we will always listen. And it starts with something as simple as the shirt.
Right. That then I'm so glad you're speaking of two things there. Obviously, the original question I had about self-advocacy, whether that is in the way that you're hoping that they will be, or that you're giving them the options to voice what they like, they don't like, what they need. Those are so important, especially as they develop additional skills and are able to communicate in whatever form it might be. But also something that you touched on, because you have another child, as a family, how do you balance um, how do you balance the needs of one child versus the other? And in my case, I told you I had twins, so I made an effort very early on never to compare them, because they are two distinctive people, and they do have their own types of weaknesses and strengths. And I always wanted to be a parent that showcased them individually of who they are, still celebrating that they're twins, but knowing that they are vastly different in their way that they see the world. So how do you do that with your own sons?
Yes. So our sons, while not twins, are 19 months apart. So certainly reasonably close in age. And exactly what you said of the not comparing. Um, when our older son learned to walk, it was awesome because our kid learned to walk. When our younger son learned to walk, I'm literally like fighting tears just thinking about how amazing that was, because we didn't know it would ever happen. Um, so everything does look a little bit different. When we talk about balance in our family, the reality is it's not an exact 50-50 split of time and attention and
Right,
resources and all of that. Um, that's not what balance and what equity is in our house.
right,
What it is making sure that everyone is getting what they need. And for our older son, that means he definitely gets one-to-one time with parents. I'm very lucky that my husband is an amazing partner in all things. So our older son does get one-to-one time, and we do have special activities that, even things that Aaron is not able to join in or is not interested in joining in. He'll go to a theme park with one of us or with friends, or making that time so that he doesn't feel like the things that he loves and cares about aren't available
mhm,
to him. It certainly looks different if our family tries to go out to a restaurant for dinner than it does for other families. We have Aaron, who is so happy to be there, and that manifests as very loud squeals and lots of clapping and going up to everybody in his talker and asking for hugs and high fives and sit at their table. And he's like the mayor of the place. Or sometimes he has a really hard time and he's not comfortable and we're not really able to stay. Things look different in our house. Um, and we model as best we can how to support both of them. Um, our older son sees that sometimes this is hard or challenging, or we have to leave a restaurant. We acknowledge that it's hard when it is, and it's not that Aaron is hard, like he's an awesome
mhm.
kid.
Right.
It's that just managing all the things is a lot. And we always are careful to ask Sean how he's doing, what he thinks about that, if he has feelings about that. And we're very fortunate that our boys are tremendously close, But we have friends whose kids are not close and
Mhm.
whose non-disabled child resents or doesn't like or
Mhm.
is upset about or is confused or
Right.
has full gamut of emotions about the child who is disabled, about the disability itself. And we've always said if Sean ever has expresses those feelings to us, the answer for us isn't, how dare you say that about your brother? Don't think that. The answer is, tell me more.
Mhm.
And anytime we can lean on, tell me more about how you are feeling, or if he feels like he hasn't had enough time with us or hasn't had the attention, tell me more. And then we can arrive at something back to the self advocacy thing where he feels like he is having agency in his own life. And it allows us to always just be checking in with each other. And that will evolve as time goes. But right now, and as with most families, you take it each day. Some days you get an A plus, other days not so much.
Right.
But always when you don't know what to do, lean on the tell me more.
Mhm.
And I think that can really open a lot of doors.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think just having that communication with other family members and knowing, um, you're right. It's not the child or the sibling that's the problem, and it's just the way life is, right? And we don't get to pick how it is, but the way that we react to it is how we get to choose. And that communication is so important with family members. It's, nuclear family members and extended family, right? Meaning your whole community, I think, which leads me into my next question. If your friends and family members are not used to seeing someone who has a physical disability, what are ways that they could feel more comfortable interacting with a child or an adult that has a disability?
I love that you asked this because this is something people tiptoe around so much
Mm.
because it gets so awkward.
Yeah.
And when those who you assume would be the most welcoming and comfortable are not, whether
Mhm.
it's friends, family, it could even be educators or anyone in your circle who seems like, oh, they got this. When they don't got this, it can be heartbreaking. It can be very challenging. And, I've seen in my own life people pushing away this kid
Right.
because they're like, oh, I'm so uncomfortable. Ah. Um, so the first thing you can do as the parent is really prepare yourself for, yes, this may happen. And it can be exhausting feeling like you have to teach everyone all the time, but you have to teach everyone all the time,
Right.
whether it's strangers, whether it's family members. And if you are the family member, you don't have to know what to do and what to say. That's not the name of the game. If you do, great. Nobody needs to hear, oh, you're amazing, you're such a hero, you've got this, oh, this is the best 24/7 without actually asking how things are. Um, if you meet someone's kid, family member, anyone, and they're disabled, if you hear the news that someone's baby was just born and the baby is disabled, if you are heaping pity upon them, always unhelpful. Oh, you poor thing. Oh, this is
Mm.
so terrible. I don't know how you're gonna do like it's actually not helping.
Right.
Um, it is perfectly fine to say, hey, I don't actually know the best way to react. I don't know the best thing to say right now, but I do know that I want to be here for you. So I'm going to try and come up with ways that I can be helpful, that I can be here for you, and let me know if I get something right. And if you can think of anything I can do, or think of the most helpful thing for me to say, like, I am taking that note. I will
Right.
absolutely follow your lead and keep showing up.
Mhm.
If that will say family member, if you are the family member of, you know, if you are my family member and my kid is disabled and you're feeling awkward, um, keep checking in. Whether it's the email, the text, the phone call, if I don't return your phone call for days or weeks or months or whatever it is, keep checking in.
Hmm.
If I don't want you to check in, don't worry, I'll tell you.
Right.
But I probably do. Sometimes when I've been, on seizure watch all night and cleaning vomit out of my hair and trying to get the medical supply order, the idea of returning even a text can feel just like too much. And like, I
Yeah.
can't. So keep showing up for people. Um, Learn about and get to know their disabled child. Don't just say, "Hey, can I take your other kids out for ice cream?" Say, "Hey, do you need me to come over and watch any of your kids while you go for a walk around the block or go exercise or grocery shopping or the library?" Like whatever it is. Um, and if their child does have medical support needs, behavior challenges, communication differences, ask about and learn that thing. When people want to get to know my disabled child, is noticeable and it is meaningful. Um, and truly, you don't really have to know where to begin, but just saying, "I'm here for you and I want to be here for you," is incredibly powerful.
Yes, that I you can shout that from the rooftop because I think it's so important. And I was very fortunate to have a core group of mom friends. Some of them had also had twins, and some of them had, just kids, a lot of kids. There's always something, um, a weakness or strength that we can coordinate with. And even to this day, I'm still in contact with those moms. My sons were in play groups and things because my goal was not only did I want my son to advocate for himself, but I wanted other children to be comfortable around him. He was using a walker. Occasionally he'll use a wheelchair, but usually 99% of the time it's a walker. And so to see a young child, he started, using his walker at age 3. To see a young child in a walker is very intimidating, but not to kids, to adults. Kids don't care. Kids think it's cool. They're ready to play. It's adults. So as an adult, I always wanted the other moms and dads to be comfortable around him and not to be like, "Hey, buddy, how are you?" Like, just treat him like every other child that's on that playground. And so
Yes,
I think as parents, we have to push a little bit more than maybe a parent that doesn't have a child with any disabilities. And that's okay. It is hard work, but that's okay because at the end of the day, it is so worth it because we are there to educate. Our children are there to educate others who probably want to learn, but just like you said, are either intimidated or just not sure how to do it. And I think it's just so important to be involved in the community and to have those people
hmm
supporting us and checking in, right? Because some days are going to be really hard.
hugely. And you are so right. Like, why is that as adults, like, we just can't get over ourselves
Yeah.
sometimes, but kids
Yeah.
are like, "Hey, cool." And they'll
Yeah.
come up and talk to my kid who's like squealing at airplanes and using his talker like it's no big deal
Right.
because it's a big deal. And I will say, if you are a parent and you see your kid staring at my kids, like, "Hey, we're used to it. This is not the
Right.
first time."
Right.
We're out at the park and it's lunchtime, so he's eating with his feeding tube just like my other kid's having a sandwich.
Right.
uh, Odds are your kid hasn't seen a feeding tube,
Right.
so if you see them looking, don't stare and like shield them away and pretend like you can't see my kid. Like, he's loud and proud. I know you can see him, he knows it too.
Right.
He can understand everything you say. Like, he's just as present as anyone else. What I say when I see kids staring, and you can use this if you see your kid staring, is, "Oh, hey, this is how my kid eats. It's a feeding tube. How cool is that?" And I do a lot of "how cool is that?" because it just kind of interjects that opinion. And I invite curiosity. If people are just standing and being creepy, I'll be like, "Hey, that's kind of creepy."
Yeah.
Kids are rarely just creepy. Kids are curious.
Right.
And invite the curiosity. If I'm shielding my child away and apologizing that he's eating with his feeding
Mhm.
tube, that really sends a yucky message. But I'm like, oh, how cool is this? Let me show you. I make smoothies for him that he gets in this tube. Do you like smoothies? And
Right.
kids are like, yeah, I love smoothies. There's one kid one time who's like, no, I don't like smoothies. And I'm like, dude, you're ruining my story. Um, but really find those points of commonality. Oh yeah, I see that you've noticed that kid is a wheelchair user, has a walker, seems to have a vision impairment, talks
Mhm.
differently, like whatever it is. Oh, I see you've noticed that. How cool is that? Some
Mhm.
people, their bodies work differently. Yep, they're out getting groceries just like we are. How cool is that?
Mhm. Yeah, that's so important to share that, I think, with teachers and other parents and those in the community that, yeah, it's just the way it is. Like you just go with it. And yeah, the curiosity from children and adults, I mean, for me, it's okay. I know sometimes it was when they were younger, it was frustrating, but I realized like if they're just being curious, then it's my job to educate or my son's job to educate. Now, if they're being rude, that's a different situation. And I
Absolutely.
think as being, advocate to educate them also, but maybe not such a kind way. But
Yes.
but most of the time people are just curious, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we do. We want to invite curiosity. And you know what? If you're asking my son about the weird thing he's eating, he's probably wondering about the weird thing you're eating too.
Right.
So
Right.
we might ask you just questions. So brace yourself,
Right.
and know that no one is ever obligated to share their or their
Right.
child's personal medical information. If
Definitely.
you come up to me, nobody's ever done this because who would do this, but people do, and said like, "Hey, what's wrong with your kid?" Nothing. What's
Right.
wrong with you? We're good.
Right. Right.
You know, people may or may not feel comfortable or safe volunteering information. And if they don't, be okay with that and don't give them a hard time for not explaining their child's diagnosis.
Right. And I think your son Aaron would probably attract attention not because of who he is, but I believe he has a very important animal. Can you tell us
Yes.
a little bit about his service dog?
Yeah, she is asleep on my left foot right now, as a matter of fact. Because he's
Off duty. She's
so
off
she's
duty
off
at the moment.
duty, and I just get the cuddles. So Aaron was matched with his service dog Hetty through an amazing organization called Canine Companions. They were matched in February of 2020, so literally weeks before the world just shut down. So good timing. And so canine companions dogs are trained to do many different tasks. A service dog is different than a therapy dog or an emotional support animal. Service dogs are protected within the Americans with Disabilities Act and do have public access in a way that the other types of dogs might or often do not. And the thing that makes a service dog is that they are trained in specific tasks to mitigate the disability. And so, first of all, she's awesome because she's a dog, she's a golden lab, and she's just the sweetest. Um, so, some of the tasks that she does that are really helpful to us, a lot of the sensory input commands, if Aaron is overwhelmed, having a meltdown, things are really challenging for him, she can safely apply pressure to his body, for example, safely laying across his body, putting her
Hmm.
head or her paws on him. In certain ways, he's a kid who craves that pressure and that input. And he knows, like, oh, the dog's laying on me, and you can see him calm down. And he's like, oh, I pet the dog, I pet the dog, I pet the
Mhm.
dog. So that's something that she does. And she has many other tasks that she can do as well. Um, for us, perhaps the biggest benefit that I think we weren't fully expecting when we got her is the social bridge aspect that she
Mm.
provides. As I mentioned, he is loud and proud. His disabilities are visible, which means you can look at him and easily assume he is in fact disabled because he is. He makes sudden loud squealing sounds and is at the grocery store like cheering for the bagged lettuce. He likes the lighting situation, kind of he makes his presence known, and a lot of time, and he's very social and outgoing, but often doesn't really know how to interact with people or other people or kids aren't quite sure how to begin or engage in an interaction with him, or if we're out at the mall and don't have our dog and he starts squealing, people look and like, yeah.
Mhm.
And if you spend your life where people turn and look at you and make that face, um, that's no fun. When
Yeah.
you have a dog, people turn and look, and the first thing they see is the dog, and they smile. And these kids are like, "You got a dog at the mall? That's amazing!"
Hmm.
And people come, they say hi, which again is like his dream. That's what he loves. And she really kind of gives a context and a space for these interactions. She is very predictable and trained and well behaved and all of those things, so that it is, even though he is very unpredictable and runs around like a pinball when we're out, we can manage him and her, and it allows us to just kind of open up the world to, the playground or the mall or the library. Are there regulars at our local library? um Wherever we are, it's been really remarkable to just see the interactions he's having with the world and how the service dog has changed that.
Yeah, animals are great. They're like the ambassadors that we all need to have of just having that interaction with others that maybe they wouldn't have been as comfortable to come up to your son perhaps in certain situations. So having dogs like that, that's wonderful that you've had a good experience with can I ask her name?
Oh yes, her name is Hetty.
Hetty. That's very
Hetty
cute.
with an H. Yes.
Oh, cute. So in all of your parenting, when your son started school, and I'm chuckling because I already know the stress that school involves, even to any child, right? There's often a mismatch of teachers or services aren't provided or bullying or many things happen in school. Hopefully good things, but sometimes not every day is perfect. But how did you start to navigate your son's education?
Yes, this is a huge one. And as you're laughing, I'm laughing too. Our son will be transitioning into middle school next year. So we've been visiting schools and just had our annual IEP meeting, and that is very much on our minds. Um, School can feel like, pardon me, school can feel like such a big leap. This is often the first time that our kid has been away from us at all, ever, and certainly for this length of time. And when we don't always know what is happening every minute of every day with our kid, um, whether a kid is best suited fully in general education, fully in special education, a combination split between the two, a specialized school, your public school, all of that depends so greatly on the individual child and where they are and what their needs are. Our son has been able to attend public school. He splits his days between special education and general education, which has been a great fit for him. Um, the biggest thing for me is finding out from the start how the teacher prefers to communicate,
Mm,
so that I feel like I have a direct line to the teacher. The best thing in the world is when you're like, I don't need to micromanage this because they got this.
right.
And if your teacher is communicating with you, then you can start to feel that. I have been in situations, his educational experience has been overwhelmingly positive. We've had really remarkable teachers. But there have been instances when that hasn't been the case, or when services aren't being provided, or they're not being appropriately provided. And it can be hard to figure that out. Certainly, if your child is receiving services at school, such as occupational therapy, speech therapy, any educational therapy or tutoring from a resource specialist, if there are accommodations written in, special equipment, anything like that. Make sure confirm that the accommodation, or like, if your IEP says these accommodations, they legally must be in place. If you say, hey, my kid needs a snowboard in the room, like, no, they're never going to put a snowboard in the room for your kid because it's not in your IEP. Good luck getting that into your IEP. Um, confirm that everything is there as soon as the IEP is settled, which is hopefully by the beginning of the school year, so it's there. Find out in advance when the service providers, the speech therapist, the occupational therapist, the physical therapist, anyone, find out when those services are being delivered. And I always say to parents, if your IEP meeting is the one contact with everyone during the school year, it's going to be a rough meeting.
Mm.
It is going to be long and you're going to be getting to know these people. And when you don't have a relationship with the team, um, it can be contentious, challenging, not sure if they're telling the truth, like all these things. So make conversation and relationship be your ongoing job. It maybe you'll need to micromanage, but ideally not. Ideally, you are checking in and saying, "Hey, I want to hear what my kid is working on with you so that I can best carry over and support that at home." Am I my kid's therapist all day at home? No, I am not.
Right.
If he is working on writing his letters at school, which my kid is, and they are giant and they're sloppy and they're all over the place and they are spectacular because they are letters and it's so
All right.
amazing, then I'm not going to have therapy sessions with him at home when I just want to be his mom, but I can say, like, hey, you know what? We need to make a birthday card for your friend. So I'm going to have you write some letters on that birthday card. And little things like that, asking, hey, how can I support you?
Mm.
Really helps everybody to be open about what they are doing. And also, if you are hearing things from them that sound like, I don't know how I feel about that, ask if it's possible for you to come in and observe, bring up your concerns, and do your best to not come in with a big chip on your shoulder and like, I am just going to tear down the system. Um, People didn't get into these education and support professions because they want to do the wrong thing.
Right.
They did it because they're passionate and their heart is in the right place. Um, I've had some very contentious situations where my son was not being served well. I've had to go to the school's administration to talk about things. I've had to go to the special education department to talk about things. The more that I can do so in a reasonable and well-educated way, the more it serves my kid. If I go in yelling and screaming, which I want to be, if I do that, it is not serving my child. And I think we always have to remember that. And again, we have absolutely been there. But I'm happy to report that our public school experience really has been just overwhelmingly positive for him.
That's good because we do often hear nightmare stories of IEP meetings. I thankfully we had good experience, a great team of teachers, but I was also like you, I was involved in their education and just uh, I mean, okay, I was a PTO president, but that was just because
Amazing.
that's the kind of mom I was.
Yep.
But um, it wasn't because I wanted to micromanage. It was just I wanted to be involved in a typical school day. But I was also there just, prior to the IEP meetings or after, or, luckily we had therapists giving us reports and video clips and things because my son did react differently at school, right, than he did at home. And that I had to make, there is a distinction. He reacts just like everyone else in different situations. And he feeds off the love that his teachers were giving him or classmates were showing him, where he started to manipulate a little bit in a nice way. But
Yeah, the kids are
I,
smart.
you're
Yep.
right. And I'm like, that's not something we do in the house. So how, so you have to see, all right, where those therapists and teachers are coming from. How is he reacting? Your child is reacting in those situations. But yeah, definitely I think as parents of disabled children, and I think you mentioned this, like we have to be flexible.
Yes. Oh my
Right.
gosh. We have to be flexible and we have to be prepared that things might go beautifully, things
Right.
might go terribly.
Right.
We don't know. And talking about the IEP meetings, we have literally never come to an agreement in the IEP in the room, ever. And
Oh,
doing this,
interesting.
my son was in preschool. Um, Something that I wish I had learned from the very beginning, and I wish they would really coach everyone in, is so first of all, your IEP should not be your only conversation with the team throughout the year. Keep the communication going and think about what you are looking for your son's next year in school to look like, and know that goals drive services.
Mhm.
What do I mean by that? If I believe my son needs speech therapy in order to succeed academically, the federal law is that all children are entitled to receive a free and appropriate public education. For my child's education to be appropriate, he needs his communication to be facilitated by speech therapy. If there is not a speech goal in his IEP, then there's no justification for that speech therapy.
Right.
So know that there needs to be a goal for that. So really if you can, ask your team for those goals in advance so
Mhm.
that you can look at them and have a sense of where your team thinks your kid is headed in the next year. And it might surprise you in the best ways, things that they think your kid is on track to do. I've certainly been like, yeah, we'll put that in. He's never going to do that. And he totally does that because he's amazing.
Right.
And I see one quick thing in the chat. California and Georgia both offer IEP facilitation as a voluntary dispute resolution process to assist families and school districts by providing a neutral facilitator free of charge. Marianne, can we be best friends? You're
Yeah. Good information to share.
for that comment. So first of all, something I didn't mention. So my book, while our experience is directly with the systems in California, the book was written for anyone, anywhere, and it's really how to access all of this. And thank you, Marianne, for mentioning IEP facilitation and dispute resolution. Um, your district, I sounds like Georgia does it too. So A plus Georgia has voluntary dispute resolution that your assistant principal, for us, it's the assistant principal in charge of special education, can guide you towards the resources of learning about that. A resource that I absolutely love that is in every state and often will have many outposts in the state, and I'm sure in Georgia's a big enough state, they have multiple. And you can Google this, the Parent Training and Information Centers.
Mhm.
And if you go to Parent Training and Information Center, Georgia, and if you Google that, the national website will pull up. It will show you your closest locations, and they can really speak to what is accurate and how things are administered in your state, in your district. The parent training and information centers are free. They are very often run by parents who are also in this world and have been through this process. And very few of us know what the heck we're doing when we start. So these are a remarkable resource wherever you are in the country that they can give you information. As we all know, things are delivered differently depending on not just what state you're in, but even county and school district and what day of the week it is. So really getting local information. If I'm pulling my information from the School Board of Alaska, is not going to be super helpful. So I need to always find what is local, and the parent training and information centers are a great neutral resource.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And there are multiple resources similar to that, and you mentioned many of them in your book. And obviously, Google is our friend, and the library is your friend, so you can always get additional information specific to your needs or your child's needs as well. But Kelly, I've got one more question before we kind of wrap it up. What is your vision for the impact that this book will have? You've been kind of on this for about a year. It came out last spring, I believe.
Almost to the day. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you hope that this book will do for our community?
What I'm hoping for this book is no small feat. I believe that this and the access to information can fundamentally change how parents enter into the world of parenting a disabled child. If we can be empowered with real information that is usable and understandable and not ridiculous and overwhelming and only medical speak or only legal speak, but if we can get information to families as quickly as possible in a way that makes them feel empowered and empowered to love and serve and support their kids exactly as they are, I believe that fundamentally changes the journey for ourselves and for our kids. And it can really keep us out of that bottomless pit feeling that so many of us feel at the beginning of our journey. And I'm excited to say the book is in libraries across the country. I was most passionate about getting it into libraries because so many people who can't afford to buy a book need access. So go to your library, check it out. If your library does not have it, request it. Libraries can order books. Um, and getting this into hospitals and doctors' offices and people, educators, social workers, people who are delivering the diagnosis, can help parents on this journey. Oh, Marianne, I haven't even read your comment, but I'm excited. Uh, Marianne says, yes, procedural safeguards explain the. I'm going to do the thing where I'm getting old, so I'm removing my glasses straight. Yes, procedural safeguards explain the dispute resolution processes such as mediation, state compliant, and due process hearing. Although IEP facilitation is not required under IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, um, some states like California and Georgia offer IEP facilitation in addition to those other dispute resolution processes required by law under IDEA. Yes, just found it at my library. Amazing. I love that you keep coming back to the resources that are available to families in our states. And if you are having trouble finding or accessing these resources, talk to the special education department at your school district, talk to other parents, talk to the parent training and information centers, talk to the social service support systems in California. That's called Regional Center, which supports folks with intellectual disabilities, and a few other diagnoses, including autism and epilepsy. And they absolutely have some resources that are available for free to families. And you can also contact organizations. Yes, to going to your library, because if your library doesn't have the exact information, maybe your librarian can help you find a resource for a local organization that serves folks with cerebral palsy or autism or Down syndrome or whatever that is. Um, Sometimes it's just too overwhelming to even make that Google search of Down syndrome Atlanta or whatever it is you are doing, and really lean on those people who are delighted to help.
Yeah, definitely get those resources. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Libraries and we have so many resources, but oftentimes parents may not know about them. So if you do know, share with others. I think it's so important. It does empower you, and empowers your child, and empowers our community. And I think that's our job as parents is to share that information and to get those services we need for our sons and daughters. So Kelley, I do want to thank you so much for
Yes.
taking time out of your day, and thank you to all those who
In
attended.
the
And
Q&A, I see Jake asked, does the book go over life after school and if volunteer work is an option? I made the very tough decision to keep this to not adult transition and the later life, for our kiddos, simply because I had to keep it under a certain page count, but I'm seriously considering the adult transition being the next book, because that, as we know, is such a hugely important thing.
I will link all of these resources that we discussed in the webinar. Of course, Kelley has multiple resources in her great book, which is available here at Gwinnett County Public Library or your local library and bookstores. So again, Kelley, thank you so much for your time, and I wish you and your family all the best. And I hope our paths cross someday in the future as we are on this journey of parenting our disabled child.
Yes, agreed. Thank you so much for having me. Libraries are a huge passion of mine, so this means a lot to me. Thank you.